Right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rethinking Legal Ops, where we have forward thinking conversations about how the integration of law and tech are changing the way we see and practice law. I'm your host, Aishwarya, head of legal at Speed Legal. Today, we have with us an amazing guest, Marco Mendola. He is a trainee lawyer at Holy, which is an engineering construction firm where Marco works in house. And he's also the founder of MM3 Legal, and they're doing really groundbreaking, exciting work, which we're going to talk a bit more about today. Wonderful to have you here, Marco.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And hello, everyone.
Great. So, Marco, just to kick things off, I'm very curious about your academic and professional journey and what got you into legal design and got you inspired to do what you're doing today.
Well, yeah, most difficult question probably to start like that. My journey, let's say professional and academic, is a very strange one and definitely not a straightforward one. Very briefly, originally I'm from Italy, you can probably tell. But then after my master's, I moved to France for a short bit of time, and then to the Netherlands, to Leiden University for a master in law and digital technologies. And then life, gives you some challenges. And so I basically moved to the UK with my wife, and now I've been here for now 7-8 years. I'm basically, converting all my background from civil law to common law, because probably you from the US, your common law system. Here in Europe, there's a big mix. So I'm in the process now to qualifying as a qualified lawyer in England and Wales, and that's where I'm working in house, with Holy. And then legal design is a passion, a total passion. I've approached legal design a couple of years ago, but it was mostly just theory. I was reading, I was attending events, but there was nothing practical, which is absolutely countersense for legal design, because you need to put your hands in it. You get your hands dirty, let's say. I'm not a designer, so I have a legal background, but you can approach this matter from a different angle. And I joined the Legal Creatives Academy back last year or so with Tessa Manuelo, and it's been extremely formative. And from that day, I've met so many people down the road, and I've learned so many skills that I feel so much connected to it.
Great. And what an interesting journey. It seems like you've seen the practice of law in different countries, and that must give you a very interesting perspective on how you
Yes.
approach legal documents and contracts, because that's such a rich experience to have. And while you were talking about having a legal background, not being a designer, it reminded me of a conversation I had with Tessa a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about how we all have all these different skills, but when we go to law school, we kind of forget that there's this whole other range of skills that we have. We have creativity, lawyers can be artistic and all those things. And when I look at some of your work, it really makes me reimagine the practice of law, because you don't have to be black or white,
No, indeed. You know what? I think the best experience of traveling and working in different countries and then jurisdictions put you in a perspective where you need to be sure that your audience understands what you're doing. Yeah. So you go through a bit, let's say a bit of suffering is not suffering. You go through a bit of challenges because, it's not your culture, it's not your place, it's not the way that you have learned law and things. But that's exactly why you need to be sure that you can align and your communication somehow works, right? Because there are cultural gaps, differences, way of explaining, way of teaching. And so let's say when I approach legal design and in terms of creativity, how to try to be creative to solve problems, right? I said, okay, I need to understand the persona, which means is this document or is what I'm delivering clear, simple, understandable to the audience? Is it providing a service? Is useful, or is just a cool tool? Because I can craft something beautiful, but maybe it's not useful.
Yeah, no, totally. And I love how you emphasize that communication, when you go to a different country and like you're now practicing law and learning to practice law in a different jurisdiction, that sort of communication becomes very, very key. And I think in general with like law, communication is now becoming a bigger part of the theme as we're trying to figure out ways to just communicate legal matters better, even, with like non-lawyers, especially with non-lawyers, because I went to law school because I was really into like languages, and I felt like law gave power to language, and it felt very fascinating to read about it. But later in law school, I learned that a lot of jargon and legalese also takes a lot
Oh, yes,
of power because people don't understand it; they don't want to read it.
absolutely,
Which is why I'm
absolutely.
particularly excited with what you're doing. It's really trailblazing. So
I
congrats.
mean, I definitely understand what you mean, and real expert, not me, but real expert people that Stefania Passera in legal design, for example, or many others here in the UK, for example, Sarah Fox for commercial and construction, and Elizabeth de Stedler from South Africa. I mean, the world is full of experts that are fighting this battle against legalese, and
Yeah,
I'm a proud fellow of that, because it's basically another language on top of the real one, where somehow, if we want to address the problem, what's wrong today in approaching legal documents or drafting contract, the problem is, first, you said that rightly, legal abuse of legalese, because you basically create an additional language on top, created by lawyers for other lawyers. But where's the client? The client
yeah,
cannot be, maybe is a lawyer, 101%,
yeah,
but maybe not. So why you need to abuse that? I may appreciate that some legislation must be mentioned, so a bit of legalese somehow is gonna squeeze here and there, but that cannot be the whole document.
yeah, yeah,
um, Straight after the abuse of legalese, the wall of text. So, in other words, white, justified, wall of text in black.
yeah.
Oh dear, the document is not accessible. I can tell you, I'm a dyslexic lawyer and I struggle massively with wall of text, but I'm pretty sure you don't need to be dyslexic to suffer that, because you need to
Mm,
pay very much attention and go through each line, which is exhausting.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
third thing, well, I call it monsters, but when I see stuff like notwithstanding, whereas,
Yeah.
uh, as reasonable as, but no, I mean, all these sort of formulas that are not just archaic, but if you really think about it, they don't make sense. What I'm trying to is like, try to read the same sentence 3 times, close your eyes, listen to yourself, say, what? Please tell me what's going on in the US. How is in your experience? Because you're in California right now, right?
Yes, in California, Berkeley right now. So similar stuff. I think definitely like the American drafting style does rely a little bit more on simple language, and which was one of the biggest changes for me because I studied law in India and for a while in France, and in both of those countries, they're pretty jargon heavy. Like law is treated as this like its own like very technical field, which it is, but then lawyers are not really taught to like communicate. We're taught to communicate in complex ways in general. So I used to say a lot of like howsoever, notwithstanding, therefore, and like instead of
Because
therefore,
it
like
gets because
people
it
get
gets in
so
your brain. It takes you,
yeah.
like, it's kind of like a demogorgon, literally.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. So when I took my first legal research and writing class over here, and I wrote like that, I thought that the professor would be very impressed, like by all the jargon that I'd used, and the professor was not very impressed because she was like, "You've written a memo for the client. The client is going to understand absolutely nothing. They're going to have to come back to you, and then you're going to have to explain them. It wastes everyone's time." So definitely simpler English, but not to a satisfactory level. Like there's still enough jargon that you're almost, and this is my opinion, of course, but you're almost always are going to have to talk to a lawyer to understand
I
whether that's
appreciate it.
like
Yeah.
a form or like a contract or something like that.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, my comments, let's say, on that are, yeah, quite strong. I understand, but not so extreme in a point where we need to demolish the whole thing. It's more like cleaning up in a Marie Kondo style.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
sparks joy, uh, delete the rest, and then set your room in proper order first before you criticize what's outside, right?
Yes.
So,
I love
and
that. Marie Kondoing
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
field.
yeah.
I absolutely love that. That should be a
I've
thing.
actually no, I've actually heard that from a lesson I've attended in legal design a few months ago, and I won't forget it anymore.
Yeah.
Because I think metaphors sometimes are amazing to describe an emotion, because legal design, and it's mostly about empathy, right? I mean, there are 5 phases. From the empathy to the define and iterate. I won't repeat those. Everyone knows them, but empathy is such a huge factor, right? So any tool you have at your disposal to reach your user empathy, or your user need, your persona needs, your persona pains, to try not to resolve all of them, but at least trying organically, step by step, to really understand what's the problem first before you deliver a solution that may be, again, not useful, or you are just the one that likes it, but then you say, yeah, I like it, but it's not useful. But in terms of extremes, now I'm a fellow of the legal design school from Antti in Finland. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're pretty cool, and the environment is amazing. Lots of people are attending, designers, lawyers, marketing. It doesn't matter what's your background, okay? There's a lot of practice, but together there's a lot of theory too, in a very empowering way. So they're not, what I like, it's that they're not teaching. They give you the tools to empower, and then you develop your own ideas on that. And one of the things that really was like super super funny, in one of their books, there's a famous quote where it says, like, law is broken. That's how they approach it. So if we go back to the main question that we did at the very beginning, where we said, what's the problem now with contracts? Well, most of them are adversarial, 90%, 99 probably.
Yeah.
So the approach is adversarial. So it's you versus the other. And then your relationship, so already with the client, is starting already like in a very strange way. So you're not kind of trying to mediate. It's more like a confrontation.
Yeah.
This is what I want. This is what she wants. This is what I want. This is what he wants. So it doesn't work like that. At least, it shouldn't. But a very funny point is that I've read that a Finnish security firm was testing a theory to put the Herod clause in their terms of service. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I
So,
haven't.
in other words, they were testing in their terms of service, so that they wanted to prove that no one was reading the terms of service because they were very long.
Right.
So they added a clause, like from the Old Testament story, where the user needs to assign their firstborn child to us for the duration of eternity. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
and people were signing it, said, yeah, of course. So because you don't read it. And,
That's
and
such
this
a
is
great
just,
example.
yeah, then I'm fully aware that in a court of law, these clauses are not enforceable.
Of course.
But it's just funny.
Yeah.
But it's real.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And what did you call the name of the clause?
it's called the Herod clause, because
Herod.
Herod was one of the
Oh, it's a
religious
little.
mythological
I see.
character.
I see.
Yeah.
That is
No, it was very
amazing.
fun. I mean, I keep repeating this every day in my firm, and now they're a bit annoyed about that too. So yeah,
No, that is a great example. I'm going to write that one down. And
yes,
that is so true. I mean, it's like we've got so many memes about people like, I'm a great person, I'm honest, I don't lie except for in terms and conditions. Like, yeah, I agree.
exactly.
We
Yes,
all do that. And it
yeah.
doesn't have to be that way. And I was recently doing some research and I found Apple privacy nutrition labels, like Google, the new Google like privacy policy, so much better. Like you look at it and you understand it, which is the purpose of privacy, right? Like you want to
Yeah.
ensure people know their rights, like they know what they're giving to you, so you want to communicate it well.
Yeah.
And it opened my eyes to this new perspective where privacy policies and terms and conditions, they don't have to be sneaky. It's in the best interest of also for the companies to properly communicate so that you don't get sued in the future, and you can mitigate some of those like reputational risks and stuff. And I think with the newer generation, I can already say that now because the Gen Z are here, so it feels great. With the newer generations, they're like much more conscious about these
Yes,
things, and they
about
talk.
yeah, and so something that you definitely need. Probably, I know you're doing lessons in Berkeley, right, with students. So I
Yes.
think it's perfect for you to test this from a real audience, from a younger generation, right? Where you say, guys, question: how would you start a business relationship, like in a sneaky, confrontational, uh, purely business purpose driven, or you want to build up a relationship with your client? And by relationship, I don't mean that we need to become best friends. I'm not saying, I'm not putting that up to let's say a funny idealistic way of living. Not at all. It's more like respect, and then building up a good relationship with your client, which automatically raise up trust, which is a huge concept philosophically speaking, but we are not. I'm not, let's say, entitled to speak about that. I'm just saying that respect builds up relationships, and from relationship you builds up trust, and then the client is going to come back because you treated him well. He's going to
Yeah.
come back. He gives you more work,
Yeah.
and he's going to spread your name all across, saying, you know what, those guys, they work pretty well. I recommend this to you. Because
Yeah.
I appreciate that we are in the era of social media now, even Web3 era, but the power of word to word still matters.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know what
Absolutely.
you think about it, but I think it's real.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, totally agreed. I mean, that sort of integrity and credibility you show, like with just people that you work with, or like like clients that you work for and stuff. I think it is still one of the biggest wealth that like for any company, that's sort of like goodwill. And just in our work experience as
exactly.
well, some of our best opportunities have been through people that we knew, like they just liked our work, so they connected us with someone, and that's just how it's gone. You can do all the marketing, you can spend thousands of dollars, but if you build that trust with one person, it's going to multiply into like
Exactly.
like 10 other people trusting you. So a big believer in
It's
goodwill.
it's it's literally, I fully agree with you with that. It's literally an investment. And because we talk about personas, and then this, let's say, the main point today was about creativity, right?
Yes.
You know better than me that, especially, I don't know, probably you have a bit more marketing background than me. People think in a different way, and people feel connected, or feel um, engaged in different ways or in different topics, right? So when the standard approach doesn't work, you need to find an alternative,
Yeah.
right? Which can be anything. Can be, I'm a fan of gamification or gaming. I think it's a super powerful tool to engage with an audience. So which means based on the culture of levels, incentives, and so reward.
Yeah.
But if we focus about creativity, let's show and don't tell, because this is a mantra for legal design. Can you
Yeah.
please pick up the template I shared with you just a moment ago about the corporate organigram,
Okay.
the picture two, please? Because I want
Yes.
this. It's nothing serious. It's just a sketch. If you go on the number one,
The
this
number
is
one.
this is there are two versions. This is the standard template. I think there's one linear corporate organigram, and a second one is exactly what I think. I can send you again the file, because I think, yeah, I send you the file here. Look, you should have it directly on your inbox.
Oh, I
That's the
see.
first.
Sorry, I get
So
that. Did not have this one. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
no
I'll
worries
share
at
it in
all.
just a second.
Yeah, no worries at all. So I can give some context to anyone who's listening. If you're working in house like me, or even if you work in a business, not necessarily law, you will definitely deal with some organigrams. So you know the organigrams, like the pyramidal structure of who is the boss, who commands and control, who is in charge for this, and that. Okay, this is not legal design. This is just a sketch. This is a sketch prototype, badly done in 15 minutes. So it's not about quality here, it's just about the message. So I wanted to, the organigrams are with the mega CEO at the top, and then all the others associate whatever afterwards, and then the associate of the associates, and then the super associates of the associates underneath. So it's extremely pyramidal, and I, to make a bit fun of it, to challenge a bit this stereotype, I just use the Lord of the Rings character from
Mortar, I see
Sauron.
that.
And actually, I spent 10 minutes to read all the right names, because it is, Tolkien is pretty detailed. But apart from that, again, this is a nerd version of it. But the point is, think about an organigram: linear, boring, old style, and pretty much scary. This is what was version 1. And then I tried to create a version 2, again, just a sketch, nothing serious. And the second one, indeed, that's the one. If you can maximize, so at least we can see a bit. So what I've done, I've tried to use an agile way of thinking, so, and then putting the exact people, let's say, corresponding to the first organigram from the center to the outside. And rather than saying who is on top, who is in charge, who is the chief, who is not the chief, who doesn't count, we reverse the perspective from a newbie that has just joined the firm, last of the chain, right? In this case, is Legolas on the top left. We say, I'm the newbie and I want to know who is in charge. So as you can see at the center, the very center, you have Sauron, or whatever, the CEO, which means responsibility. I mean, yes, of course you are the CEO, but because of that, you have some duties too. That's where the responsibility comes. And then all the rest, so from assistance and then support. So yeah, I think, again, this is not rocket science. It's just an example of how you can be creative. So in a way, when I hear from colleagues or friends, oh, I'm not creative, I will never do it. That's not true. Of course, some people are more inclined, like some people are, faster runner by default, because
Yeah.
nature gave that gift. So I appreciate that, there's only one Leonardo da Vinci, and we won't be all Leonardo, but creativity is a muscle.
Yeah.
That's what I think. So you don't need to be the best. You don't need to be perfect. It's just that you need to challenge a bit yourself, going a bit out of your comfort zone, and trying to, you in your own way, have a bit of fun and trying to find alternative ways. Because innovation is just thinking about a new idea, right? And
Yeah.
creation is just actually trying to make one,
Yeah.
deliver one somehow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to share this about creativity, because I think there's a stereotype about, I'm not creative, you are. I mean, it's not true. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. Please challenge me if you think otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, no, I fully agree. And I mean, couldn't agree more with the fact that creativity is a muscle. I mean, we all have it. Some have it in, uh, some people have a larger creativity muscle, like at the
Of course.
outset, and like some have to like, train it. And it really reminds me of like my mom. My mom is also a lawyer, and like, before she became
Oh,
a lawyer, she was an artist. Like, she still paints a lot. But when she became a lawyer, she started practicing like transactional law and just like started thinking very like black and white. It was also affecting her art. Like, she stopped painting for a few years, and then one of her friends was like, you should maybe bring some of that like artistic, like, vibe that you have from like, all the stuff you paint into the way that you approach like, law. And like, she helped design for her own practice, like a new template for using fewer like periods, using fewer commas and like things like that. So I saw her do that, growing up. And it did make me realize that it's not really that lawyers have to be logical. Perhaps it's like by our training, by the nature of our training,
Of course.
especially the way like, law school can sometimes work. It does take that abstract thinking out of you, because you do have to think very much within the framework of the laws that you're given, the cases, the precedents, all of that. But at the same time, there's just so much room for creativity in law, because at the end of the day, it is a social science. And with
No,
social
no, no.
science,
You
communication is
are.
at the
It's
center.
spot on. You exactly say it's a social science, and if we stay, of course, within the boundaries of what's somehow acceptable or respectful, why we can't follow other ways? I mean, there's, I don't see, and I think it's mostly probably again a cultural thing, and probably again, probably it's just my assumption. So please challenge me if you think it's not the case. But at least when I joined law school and then across my studies, so it was about whatever 2005 or something. There was that probably cultural tendency where you need to be super specialized,
Yeah.
and you can only be a super specific professional, whatever it is. Let's stay with law, because I'm not aware of other disciplines, but you need to be a super specific lawyer on that specific niche for that specific thing. And the multidisciplinary thing has always been seen as a be serious thing, or I don't want to even touch the topic about being an in-house lawyer, because still a few years ago you were like relegated like to the last category because you were in a real one. That's exactly the opposite. You need to, I can talk from experience, and I'm aware many friends and colleagues are the same. You need to, when you are in house, or you need to, you don't work in a traditional, always way of being a lawyer. You need to, if you know the answer, amazing. If you don't, you need to find a way. If you don't know how to do it, same. You need to find a way. So, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Also reminds me of another conversation I had with Kevin Keller. So he's an engineer before he became a lawyer, into has that sort of technical background. And I've always wondered, how do people who come from different disciplines? I studied business in my undergrad, so it was like more of like a like related to like law, like if you practice like transactional law, but like engineering, for example, is just so different. And I asked him, how does that help him become a better lawyer? And he said that it's not necessarily just engineering, but just using the skills you have as a person, like the skills you developed growing up. Maybe someone's talented with music. Maybe someone's like talented with art. Someone's I'm not talented with like art or anything, but like I do. It's easy for me to visualize certain things. So like I can see contracts, and like in my mind somehow I can see them as like diagrams and things like that. Other people have.
Can you pardon me for a second, because there's a naughty dog here doing.
No worries.
My apologies. Go, Rocco. Yeah, my apologies, guys. Just wanted to go down, probably. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I fully agree. Especially when you mention about audios or things. I'm so relieved that we have now all these functions on Outlook or in Word or any sort of applications where you can actually listen to what you're doing. Makes your life so much easier.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely. And Marco, I'm also curious about, we've been talking about like communication and like lawyers and like their creativity, but from the perspective of a client, or just like like a user, how is legal design, like all of this like better way of communicating and all the creativity, how is it making contracts more accessible and understandable for them?
Well, it's a $1 million question, so I'll try to give my 2 cents. my super modest 2 cents, based on what I've done so far, what I've learned so far, and what I've applied. So please take this seriously, but I'm aware of my limits, so check this with good experts. I'm trying to learn from the very best, but I give you my version. Accessibility to me is everything. So some people, some experts, honestly, are saying that clarity, simplicity, usability are probably the top ones. Or I think if you ask this question to 10 different people, they're going to probably give you a slightly different ranking. To me, accessibility probably is connected to all of these, but I'm going to be brave. I'm going to say what I think. And to me, accessibility is somehow a big umbrella on the top of everything. Because I think that's super connected with the concept of persona and user and understanding and empathy. So it's so well connected that, and by accessibility, I mean the use of visuals to enhance understand, to understand what you're reading, type of fonts, spaces, information architecture to be a bit more technical. That can be then, as a result of a combination of all of this, colors, I forgot. Use of colors. I mean, it doesn't need to be a rainbow. You can if you want to, but you can still use a very simple palette of colors and still deliver a huge message and stress out what's important. First, because it's been scientifically proved that the use of visuals or pictures combined to text, etc., improves massively not just your understanding, but mostly your memory. So it helps you to connect and contextualize content into a topic. So that's science. I cannot quote the exact percentage, but I've read it so many times. I'm sure you can find some literature over there. And then, by my experience, again, as a dyslexic lawyer, and I'm not the only one, and dyslexia is a complex argument. There are many different variations, many different, let's say, shades of it. So I'm not playing the expert. I'm just, let's say, sharing my direct experience. You definitely need, and it helps massively, to have the proper spaces, numbers, and to follow a structure that breaks in little chunks quantity of text or information. So again, everyone has his favorites, but yeah, I mean, to go back to the show and don't tell at this stage, I'm going to try to share with you guys what I've done so far. My best attempt so far in practice. If you want to kindly share, if you can kindly share first the number one, so the standard template T's and C's I was starting from, because so you can zoom in more even, it's fine. So I've just found this from the internet, from Google. So this is a standard terms and conditions in the commercial construction sector, if you want. But I mean, they're pretty much all the same. I have to say, frankly, this is also a good one, because you can see definitions and space and numbering. So definitely not too bad. But for the topics we are discussing today, in terms of creativity and in terms of legal design, well, we're a bit in the prehistory, right? So I can share what I've done so far. I haven't done it alone. This is a research project. It's not a product. It's not a solution. I have to be very, very modest with this. This is the result of 8-9 months of very hard research and tests and surveys and things. And I've done it in collaboration with legal creatives and Maggiotto. If you can kindly open the number 3, please, for me. Yes.
Great.
Yes. So, yes. So this is, again, as I said, a template from terms and conditions to terms of business, which is already an impactful way of building up relationships, right? Because this is how we want to make this real between us, so between the provider and the client, let's say. So we really want just to share who we are, how we want to work together, and what's our specialty, what we do for you. Okay, simply in points and stages. And then if you scroll down, I just want to give a very quick overview, because of course we can't stay into much into the details, but of course you can reach me out anytime if you want to discuss this further. We have tried with again, as I said, with Maggiotto and Legal Creatives to destroy literally as much as possible the legalese available there, to convert it into plain language. But as we said at the beginning of the podcast, to stay respectful to legal terms, because somehow legislation is still there, right? But we tried our very best to divide point by point clearly in a very essential but still clear way, to flag up the important numbers or quotes, as you can see, especially the numbers in terms of payment, which are always a struggle, and without exaggerating, in a simply modest way, a few visuals that can support you in terms of to identify the information where it's necessary to be found, and aware of the fact that the icons are a bit rusty. There's a lot work to do. It's a work in progress. So please pardon me for it's still a draft somehow, but the idea is pretty.
Really great.
Oh, thank you for that. The idea is there, right? And as you can see on the boxes at the bottom of the pages, I try to provide additional resources and additional information, both in terms of legislation, so actual legal content, or definitions. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm, reviewing contracts or reading legal content, I always struggle with definition. I never remember what the definition means. I need to scroll up and down, or find research, etc. So I said, I've done this for 15 years and I still don't understand the definition. Think about the user or the client. They have no idea what we're talking about potentially. Maybe he's, he or she's twice better than me. Amazing. But I just wanted to be sure that there's a bit of support. And then the next page, let's go to the timeline. I think it's the funniest one. If you scroll another couple of pages. Yes, so the timeline.
Yeah.
So this was extremely hard. It took me, not joking, 2 months of work. Well, I could have done it faster if I, was better, but it was I've learned a lot thanks to this. So at the very beginning, it was messy, full of quotes, full of reminders. So what I've tried to do here was to narrow down the whole contract process, a very complicated one, from start to end, and to give an overview of what's going on and what can possibly happen from a user perspective. So I've chunked that into negotiation and execution phase, and then narrow it down between all the stages of the commercial transaction. Again, lots to improve, but it's a good base. So I'm gonna work on it. And the very final, and please, if you have any questions, let me know. Last page is last page is my favorite. So I wanted to be super direct with this one. So I said, okay, now that you got this, are you happy with the terms of business? Are you ready to sign? If you're happy, amazing. Just sign, business name and role, put the date on, we keep going, we work together. If you're not ready, no problem whatsoever. We're ready to help. We're not forcing you to sign. Contact us. We discuss what's wrong. We discuss what we can do, or call us back. I mean, we can arrange a call back. So I've always felt this kind of a push to sign to get things done and sent, or I don't know how it's in the US, but probably pretty much similar in the UK. There are so many lines in the signature box where you need to sign between date name, surname, role, and that you say, oh dear, should I?
It's too
It's
much.
just one, right? So, and again, I've seen this across my junior lawyer career so far in the last few years in different firms. Very experienced people like directors or engineers or architects say, "Is this the spot I need to sign?" I mean, it's not the first contract they see. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
some directors over there have been there since I was born, probably. So they
yeah,
still ask me, "Is that the place to sign?" So
yeah,
come
yeah,
on.
yeah. Yeah, because it's just written and like, built to be like so confusing. And I mean, there are some aspects as to why. I mean, some matters are just like very complicated to explain. But I'm a big believer in the fact that even like some of the most complex stuff, like you have over here, like the IP and copyright, which tends to be like a little bit complicated to explain, you've just got it in like in bullet points. So it's perfectly,
And
possible to do this.
of course, no, exactly. And to be super, let's say, a bit more precise, because I don't want to oversell this. These are just terms and conditions or terms of business. I appreciate that some contracts or some appointments are extremely complicated. It's hard to break those things in pieces right now. I mean, I can't do it alone, or a bunch of professionals needs to be on it, right? But you can start again going back to creativity. What I showed before was kind of, step 1 hour, you have fun. This is a bit more, but the principle is pretty much the same. This is not perfect. This is not, well, this is the funniest number one. This is not perfect. It doesn't need to be. But it's the result of many iterations, lots of tests, lots of feedback gathered, lots of sharing, and you build up and you progressively, step by step, get it
Yeah,
better, right? So, and then we're gonna demystify the biggest monster, I think, of law school and legal profession, which I always have answers. Everything is perfect out of my pen. No, my friend, it's not. It's an iteration process.
yeah,
You do your extreme, very best, but there's much more for you to increase if you are so modest to ask for feedback and accept what comes back, which is
yeah.
something I think we haven't been trained in law school. For sure, in Europe, we haven't been trained. I don't know in the US, I haven't been there. It's cool. Please tell me what you think.
Yeah, no, I mean similar story. I think like just that in law school as well, like you're just expected to have the answers. And I'll boil this down to like, the classroom, because I think that's where a lot of, I mean, that's where the training starts, that's where like the culture of being a lawyer begins, right? So in the US law school, we have the Socratic method of teaching, where you introduce an idea and you discuss it with class. Now it sounds wonderful. It's like great, everyone gets to talk. But we also have a concept called cold calling. If there's like any US lawyers here, they probably already have goosebumps hearing this because it's just traumatic. Where like the professor will just randomly, like in a class of maybe 200 people, like some of like the bigger classes, like you're doing like contract law, con law, constitutional law, like the professor would just like stop at you and say, you tell me what was the concurring opinion in this case. And you're just like, what is my name? Who am I? Like your brain just like shuts
No,
down,
no, no, of course.
So
No,
at some
that's
point,
at the same time, I have to say that challenge is healthy. I mean, it keeps you
yeah,
like, okay, wait, I have to think.
yeah,
So I agree with you. It's a challenge, but I think
yeah,
you learn from the challenges, right?
yeah,
That's and I have to say it's been a discovery to me because I've been trained to be right. I'm not right. I've been trained to
have the answers.
exactly always,
Yeah,
and then
yeah, yeah,
I don't have it. I don't know. And but back in the days when I just went out of uni, these sort of questions are so big that you just try to survive through your day trying to do something decent, right? But then when you kind of engage at kind of a bit higher level of your type of work, you say, I'm sure I'm not the only one that I'm asking myself those questions.
yeah,
You just
no,
need to break um break the ice. I don't know. It happened to me. I'm grateful. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
totally. And I think that sort of change is happening. I think like Berkeley now, like the legal research and writing class, I've been at Berkeley for 5 years now. And I've seen the way the legal research and writing class has, evolved and changed now. Like, they're using like newer, cooler things of like, drafting things. Stanford, I mean, Codex has
Wow.
like its own like, group where like, they brainstorm
You
like
are, yeah.
research
You
and
are,
like,
guys, you are at the top of the curve, of course. I don't know what to choose between Berkeley and Stanford, honestly, but of course,
go
you
Bears,
are.
always. That's our
Right,
birthday slogan. We do like go Bears.
no, but of course you lead the change over there, and then everything goes reflected everywhere else. So absolutely, you're doing great things, and keep going. Please keep going.
Thank you, Marco. And I think like this like sort of change, it is happening in so many places. I mean, people like like you, Tessa. There's other people that I've spoken to. You're all like leading this change, like getting people to think about there we can draft contracts differently. We don't always have to sound like a lawyer. We can lawyer without always sounding or writing like a lawyer. So I find that really inspiring, and I love your template. I'm so
Thank you
grateful
so much.
that you showcased it on our podcast. And just one question
Sure.
about your template: what are the top 5 things that you're trying to fix with them, and what's next for you?
Yes. Um, Let me give you a slightly longer answer, classical Marco, but at least I'm happy that I give you a complete answer. So, as I told you before, putting my hands on it, I was doing lots of research, but again, I reached a point where I said, Marco, research is enough. You need to do the most difficult thing. You need to try to do something on your own. Support it, of course. But then let's say that when I was reading, etc., I've identified 3 main ways of how to make contracts or legal documents better. So I call it school of thought. I'm gonna name those experts because they are kind of masters to me. I know some of them I don't even know them, but it's fine. I mean, I want to be grateful for what I've learned from that. So one school of thought is the so-called legal engineer, which is not legal engineer in terms of coding, but there's a professional here in the UK. It's called Sarah Fox. She's a commercial construction lawyer, but with an engineering background somehow. So in the way that the solution that she offers, and she's quite famous for the so-called 500 words. So she wants to provide a version of contracts in just 500 words to reach what's necessary, which is an amazing thing. So what she's trying to do is basically coding the law, right? So she's kind to not reverse engineering, but she understands that the problem is with the code. So she's trying to, like a surgeon, trying to find what works and what's not. So that's one way of approaching. The second approaching is kind of like, I call it the red liner, the mediator. I don't know if you've heard of Nada Al-Janafi from the US, contract
Yeah,
nerd.
yeah. I have.
Um,
Yeah.
and she has written an amazing book for redlining contracts. And I call it the mediator, because basically what she's trying to explain is I don't want to revolutionize or crash the system. I'm just here to offer a good solution for redlining in a non-confrontational, respectful, sharing way to find a solution together. So we're going to meet in the middle and trying to build up what's best for clarity and simplicity. So it's kind of a middle step, right? And then let's say the final, it's not extreme, but a bit stronger. I call it the kind of a design maestro. Well, Stefania Pastor, as I mentioned before, she's a designer. She has a legal background, but her design approach is so strong that it goes deep in understanding. Again, is this useful? So because you don't have a legal background, you don't care about what's written down. You need to understand first that it's useful and understandable. My ways. What's my way? My five things. Very briefly. So, first of all, I try to, as I said, accessibility to me is everything. So, first things first. Mary Kondo method. simplify. So try to go through the document that you have and go and simplify. Then ensure that your terms are clear. So if you see any monsters, notwithstanding, whereas, etc., unless necessary, please delete it. Use of visuals in support. Again, you don't need to exaggerate, but they can definitely help. Third and four, well, I really believe in supporting legal content. So definitions that can help, hyperlinks, any sort of resources that if you want to dig in a bit more, it's available. And finally, but I probably it's the point number one, using all these first four, stronger relationships to reach trust and to be sure that you can deliver and be of service to the community. So from legal as a hustle, from legal as a service. That's my point.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love the energy that you bring to it and all the creativity you brought to it. And I love seeing your template. I'm definitely going to go through it a little bit more. And I'm sure our listeners have really enjoyed, listening to you and all your insights. And I'm very excited for all the great things that you do with your templates at MM3 Legal and just in general, leading the change. So thank you so much again, Marco, and thanks very much for joining the podcast.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you again to all our amazing listeners. Thank you for tuning in every week. We're here every Thursday with more amazing speakers. So stay tuned and stay creative.